I tried Stoic morning routines for 30 days. Here's what happened. Every morning, for the last 30 days, I did exactly what Marcus Aurelius did when he woke up. The same reflection, the same journaling practice, the same single question he asked himself before he faced the world. I copied the morning routine of a Roman emperor, a man who governed millions, fought wars, buried children, and somehow remained the most mentally composed leader in recorded history. And what happened over those 30 days was not what I expected. Before we get into what happened, you need to understand what Marcus Aurelius was actually doing each morning. Meditations wasn't a book he intended to publish. It was a private journal, written largely in the early hours before the demands of empire consumed his day. He was writing to himself, reminders, corrections, commitments. He wasn't performing philosophy, he was practicing it, alone, before anyone else was watching. That distinction matters more than most people realize. The Stoic morning practice has three components. The first is what Stoics called the morning meditation, a deliberate review of the day ahead. Marcus would mentally rehearse the challenges waiting for him, the difficult people he'd encounter, the decisions he'd have to make, the setbacks that might come, not with dread, but with preparation. The Stoics called this premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of adversity, expecting difficulty not to be pessimistic, but to be ready. The second component is journaling, but not the kind most people do. Marcus wasn't writing about his feelings or cataloging his day. He was writing with philosophical intention. He'd ask himself one question above all others. Where did I fall short of my own values yesterday? Not to punish himself, to correct course. The Stoics believed self-examination wasn't optional. It was the mechanism by which a human being actually improved. Without it, you repeat the same mistakes indefinitely and call it living. The third component is the single question. Marcus returned to it constantly throughout meditations in different forms, but it always came down to this. Am I living according to my nature as a rational human being? Am I thinking clearly? Am I acting with virtue? Am I contributing something of value to the people around me? It sounds simple. After 30 days of asking it every single morning, I can tell you it is anything but. Week 1 was the hardest, not because the practices were physically demanding. They aren't. You're sitting quietly for 15 minutes and writing in a journal. The resistance was mental. Every morning, my instinct was to reach for my phone, to check notifications, to let the noise of the world in before I'd had a single intentional thought. The Stoic morning routine demands that you own the first 15 minutes of your day completely. And I realized in week 1 how rarely I had ever done that. The phone had owned them. The algorithm had owned them. I had handed them over without a fight every single day for years. Week 2 is where something shifted. And I want to be precise about what it was, because it wasn't dramatic. There was no moment of enlightenment. What changed was smaller than that and more useful. I started noticing a gap between events and my reactions to them. A frustrating email would arrive, and instead of reacting immediately, there was a half-second pause that hadn't been there before. That half-second is everything. That's the space Epictetus was talking about. That's where your response lives instead of your reaction. It showed up in week 2, and I think it showed up because of the morning question. Am I thinking clearly? Once you start asking that every morning, you start noticing when you aren't. Weeks 3 and 4 brought something I didn't anticipate, a change in how I related to difficulty. The premeditatio malorum practice had been the one I was most skeptical about, deliberately imagining what could go wrong before your day starts feels counterintuitive in a culture obsessed with positive thinking. But by week 3, I understood why Marcus Aurelius used it constantly. When you've already mentally rehearsed the hard conversation, the delayed project, the unexpected setback, and it actually happens, there's no shock. There's almost a recognition. You prepared for this. You can handle this. The Stoics weren't pessimists. They were the most prepared people in the room. What I kept and what I dropped, because I want to be honest with you, rather than sell you a perfect outcome. The morning meditation and premeditatio malorum I kept. Both are now non-negotiable parts of my morning. The journaling I modified, 15 minutes of structured philosophical writing every day, proved unsustainable alongside a full schedule. I now do it 3 mornings a week, with a shorter, more focused format. Marcus Aurelius himself wrote inconsistently in Meditations. Some entries are paragraphs, some are a single sentence. Consistency of practice matters more than perfection of execution. Here is what 30 days actually changed. Not my productivity, not my output, not any metric a self-help book would measure. What changed was the quality of my attention. I started each day having already asked the hard question, am I living according to what I say I value? That question, asked consistently, makes it harder to drift, harder to waste the morning, harder to react without thinking, harder to be a version of yourself that you wouldn't recognize at the end of a Stoic journal entry. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth and still found time to ask himself that question every morning. The rest of us don't have a very good excuse. If you want to try this yourself, start with just the single question. 7 days. Every morning before you touch your phone, write the answer to this. Am I living according to what I say I value? That's it. One question, 7 days. See what it shows you. I've linked Marcus Aurelius's Meditations in the description. It's the source material for everything in this video and one of the most important books you'll ever read. Drop a comment below and tell me, what would your answer to that question be this morning? I read every single one. Subscribe for new videos every Tuesday and Thursday. I'll see you next time.